Okay, the focus of this video is all about how to graph exponential functions. So we're going to use tables of data. We can also use a calculator and kind of some mental math to kind of work through these, okay? So let's focus in on A. So we have 2 to the x power. So the x values that we're plugging in are obviously in the table, -2 up through 3. So let's plug in -2 first. So we have 2 to the -2 power. Remember that a negative exponent tells me to flip. So that's going to become 1 over 2 squared, which 2 squared is 4. So this is 1 over 4. Okay. The negative exponents are the worst. Once we get through the negative exponents, it's pretty simple after that. Okay. So you have -2 comma 1/4. Okay, let's plug in -1. So we have 2 to the -1 power. Remember, that's on top. A negative exponent tells me to flip, so that's now 2 to the first power on bottom. So just 1/2. Remember, anything to the 0 power, so now we have 2 to the 0 power is 1. 2 to the first power is just 2. 2 squared is 4. And 2 to the third power, remember 2 to the third is 2 times 2 times 2. So that would be 8. Alright, so let's go ahead and make our graph where we need it. Let's see our x values. We need to start there, and then we're not going to go below the axis. So, alright, so left 2 come up 1/4. Left 1 up 1/2. Over 0 up 1. Over 1 up 2. Over 2 up 1, 2, 3, 4. And over 3 come up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we see our nice exponential graph. And don't be worried, guys, if any of these go off the graph. It's okay. Okay. So let's look at B. Okay, because B is a little bit different. So we have to first do our exponent, and then we see that we are multiplying by 2 afterward. Okay. So first let's plug in -2. So I have 3 to the -2 power, which turns into 1 over 3 squared, right? Which is 1 over 9. But then remember, we have to focus on this 2 right here, okay? So then 2 times 1/9 is just going to be 2/9, 2 over 9, okay? So let's put this one together with a -1. So I have 2 times 3 to the -1 power. Remember, 3 to the -1 power tells me to flip and make it 1 over 3. So I have 2 times 1/3. 2 times 1/3 is 2/3. And it just gets easier from there. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So 1 times, so this part right here would be 1. And then 1 times 2 is going to be 2. Okay, plug it into the first power. 3 to the first power is 3. Times the 2 out front is 6. Plug in a 2. 3 squared is 9. And then 9 times the 2 out front is 18. Okay, and then 3 to the third power. That's 3 times 3 times 3. That's 27. And then 27 times the 2 out front is 54. Okay, so now let's go ahead and make our graph. Oops, that wasn't very straight. That's better. Okay, so -2 left, 2 up 2/9. It's going to be really close, right? Up a little bit higher. 0, comma 2. 1, comma 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the rest is going to go up off the graph, and that's okay. Okay, so there's that one. Okay, so if you have a number sitting out front, it's important to remember that you always need to do your exponents before you multiply. So it's important to make sure that you're doing that first. Okay, let's look at the ones with fractions in them. So let's go down to D down here. Okay, so on a D we have a fraction. We're taking 1/2 to that power. There's nothing wrong with that. Remember, it's just going to tell us to flip. So when I do 1/2 to the -2 power, it's just going to tell me to flip. So I flip it over. The reciprocal of 1 over 2 is 2 over 1, which is just 2 squared. So 2 squared is 4. That's nice and simple. So I have 1/2 to the -1 power. Remember, a negative exponent tells me to flip it to 2 to the first power, which is just 2. Then I have 0, so remember anything to the 0 power is 1. Then I have 1/2 to the first power, that's just 1/2. Then I have 1/2 squared, so 1/2 squared means that I have to square the top and square the bottom. So 1 squared on top is still 1. 2 squared on bottom is 2 times 2, that's 4. So that's 1/4. And then I have 1/2 to the third power. So I'm applying that power of 3 to everything on top and bottom. So 1 to the third power is still 1. 2 to the third power is 2 times 2 times 2. That's 8. So that's 1/8. Okay. Let's go ahead and graph it. So this time we're starting up high and coming down low. So -2 come up 1, 2, 3, 4. -1, 2. 0, 1. 1, 1/2. And you're just going to kind of get closer. 1/4, 1/8. It's not going to get down below that axis, but you can see it's kind of the reverse shape of what we were doing on the first two. Okay, it's going to start off high and then gradually decay. And the reason that we have that start off high and come down low is because this time we're working with a fraction. Last time we weren't working with a fraction, so that's why it was exponentially growing. All right, we have one more, so 1/2 to the third power. Okay, so let's come over here and do our work. So we have 3 times 1/2 to the -2 power. So remember, 1/2 to the -2 tells me to flip. So I'm going to leave that 3 out front. And then I have 2, because I flip it, to the second power. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times the 3 out front is 12. Now let's do the -1 power. So I have 3 times 1/2 to the -1 power. Remember, a -1 power tells me to flip. So 3 times a big 2 to the first power. 2 to the first power is just 2. 2 times the 3 out front is 6. Then I have 3 times 1/2 to the 0 power. Okay? Anything to the 0 power is just 1. So 1 times the 3 out front is just 3. 3 times 1/2 to the first power. Remember, anything to the first power is just itself. So 1/2 times 3 is going to be 3 over 2, which is the same as 1.5. Okay? Then I go to the second power, so 3 to the 1/2, 3 times 1/2 to the second. Remember, 1/2 to the second power. I'm just squaring the top, squaring the bottom. So this is 3 out front times 1 squared on top is still 1. 2 squared on bottom is 4. So 3 times 1/4 is 3/4. So now we're down below 1. Okay? And then I have to the third power, so 3 out front, 1/2 to the third power. 3 stays out front. I apply that power of 3 to everything inside the fraction. So 1 to the third on top stays 1. 2 to the third on bottom is 2 times 2 times 2. That's 8. And then 3 times 1/8 is just 3/8. So there's my my coordinate. Okay. I'm going left 2 up 12 up off the graph, right? Left 1 up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Left or over none up 1, 2, 3. Over 1 up 1.5. Over 2, and we're at 3/4, so we're down below 1 now. And then again, we're just kind of getting closer to the axis. So you start off high, come back lower. Remember, you never go below that axis.